Over the past few years, everything has changed. Where and how we work and live, the way we collaborate and measure success, and the emerging technologies we use to get it all done. Welcome to The Bridge. Join our host, Scott Kinka, in a series of discussions with top leaders in technology and learn about how they bridge their lives and their businesses into our new hybrid work and AI-driven reality. Our hope is that the insights and experiences will help you on your journey in business and in life from who we were to who we are today. And maybe it'll help you get better prepared for whatever comes next. The Bridge is a service of Bridgepoint Technologies, the nation's leading IT advisory firm. Bridgepoint helps business leaders evaluate, procure, implement, and manage technology and customer experience solutions with a focus on realizing sustainable results for your business growth. And now, here's your host, Scott Kinka.
Instead of tech, let's talk about whales. Whales are amongst the largest animals in the world. They're often lumbering and slow. They're not a predator, but they are rarely killed by them. They evolved and survived through millions and millions of years. We have whales in tech, hybrid work, and the changing way we interact, as well as the pandemic, have created opportunities for the whales. Microsoft Teams, Zoom, perhaps even WebEx have become preferred ways to communicate for a large majority of information workers in the United States. So if you're a small fish, how do you compete with a whale? Well, you don't. You swim in its wake. You create a niche in a wash of the powerful but slower giant. You do the hard work. They don't have to. I asked this week's guest, Geoff Bloss, who's the CEO of BCM One, if Microsoft was a friend or foe. His answer? Neither. BCM One has a 30-year history of providing voice services to the mid-market and enterprise. And I spoke to him only days after it was announced that they were acquiring Pure IP, a leader in providing Microsoft Teams Operator Connect and direct routing solutions. They're also a partner of Zoom and Cisco WebEx. And I spoke to Geoff, a lifelong New Yorker from London, where he and his leadership team were planning the integration. The deal has since officially closed, but the conversation we had in between announcement and consummation is still incredibly relevant. There's an ecosystem swimming along beside that whale if you recognize that it's not a predator. So we talk whales, rationalizing COVID-era collaboration investments, revolutions versus evolutions, and predictions for the New York Giants in 2023, all on this episode of The Bridge. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe to The Bridge with Scott Kinka on your favorite podcast platform. 5-star ratings and great comments go a long way as well. But let's get to it. Here's my conversation with Geoff Bloss, CEO of BCM One. Welcome to The Bridge. My guest today is Geoff Bloss. He's the CEO of BCM One, a native New Yorker, I believe, but currently in London right now.
God save the king.
I love that. Geoff, why are you in London today?
I think it's been published out in the community. We're just in the process of completing our ninth acquisition at BCM, a UK-based business, Pure IP. So myself and members of our management team are spending the week taking the opportunity to meet the folks on the management side and really the broad employee base of Pure IP. Start to build some teamwork and collaboration, and then really the plans for integrating our businesses together when the transaction finally closes.
I guess teamwork and collaboration, pun intended here, right? That's probably what's behind 100%. The acquisition of Pure IP, right?
Yeah, 100%. You nailed it.
Got it. Well, let's start from the top. We've had BCM One on the show before, had a great conversation. I think our listeners, may or may not know a ton about it, but let's start with you first.
Sure.
Tell us about you. How long have you been there? Quite a while from your LinkedIn profile, but tell us just about you personally, where you live, what's going on, and then we'll get into BCM One.
I appreciate it. I always start out saying I'm a proud husband of 23 years to a wife that I don't deserve, and the proud dad to two sons, 16 and 20, that equally I am undeserving of. So I think that it always starts there with me personally. BCM story. I joined. Many folks likely know the personalities of Frank Ahern, John Cunningham, Jay Monahan. I joined them in 2012 at BCM One, coming out of a career in consulting, as well as some industry work for about 20 years prior, and helped them kind of build and grow the business over the course of 6 or 7 years. And then when our business underwent a recapitalization in 2019, and our prior founders decided to take a step back, it was my privilege to step in the role of CEO and help lead and shepherd this organization under our new ownership team.
Fantastic. And you, every day you're in New York?
Yeah. New York based, born and bred. If you gave me a couple of beers, you'd probably hear the New York accent come out a little bit more. But born and raised in New York City. Spent some brief periods of time for college and graduate school and things like that outside of it. But I'm a New Yorker through and through, for better or worse.
Giants or Jets?
Giants, of course.
Okay. All right. Well, you do know you're talking to me from Philadelphia, so we'll have some fun with that. I'll just leave that alone.
Little tough watching the success that Philly's had. I think you guys have made some incredible, I'm assuming an Eagles fan. I will say I'm a reasonable Giants fan. I think you guys have made some great draft picks over the last couple of years, and hopefully we're making competitive. We've had trouble with you guys for the last 10 years or so. So
yeah, 100%. I love the coach up there. I think he's great, and we'll see what Danny Dimes actually has this year. Hopefully, they're
paying a lot of money for. I'm not, and actually, funny that you say it. So I'm a Tar Heel, so it's a little tough rooting for a quarterback from Duke to be your primary quarterback. My gut is we're paying a hell of a lot of money for a guy that threw 15 touchdowns last year. But we'll see what happens.
We certainly will. I always like to ask, it's great when I get C-levels, and we've been very fortunate to get, some pretty serious guests on, particularly in this season. I love to hear the pitch. I mean, people know BCM One, and, we've had some of your other team members on the show and, and around and inside of our community. Can you just tell me the BCM One story from your words as the CEO?
Yeah. I mean, the way to think of us as a business is a 30-year track record, principally focused on delivering and supporting voice as an application within mid to large enterprise businesses. I think we have always felt throughout the course of our history, and I think it's true even today and will continue to be so in the future, that voice is probably the most mission critical application within businesses. I think you just have to reflect back to experiences that we've had over the last 3 years with the transition to a remote or hybrid workforce. And I think the first struggle that a lot of those mid to large enterprises had was how do you preserve continuity of delivering voice services, interacting with your end customers, interacting with your business partners. And that was really the first most critical and table stakes application for being able to continue to operate and run your business in that transitionary environment that I think most businesses, if not all businesses, have gone through over the last 3 years. And I think that's the way that our clients view us is as a business partner, as a technology provider that understands how to architect and deliver complex voice solutions in the enterprise, accompanying with it, some supportive services, whether it's network transport services, managed network services, to ensure that there is a high quality end-to-end delivery of that critical application to their employees and their workforce.
Yeah, I've always seen you guys as sort of absolutely a voice specialist and somebody the hard jobs can go to, right?
Yeah.
In a good way.
I think that's also it's a good add-on to the commentary. I think when you think of the value that we play, in contrast to some of the other larger providers that are in the space, I think the challenging opportunities are the ones where we thrive, where somebody's got a hybrid environment, they've got some kind of significant dynamic of change that they've got to manage through within their organization, and they need somebody that is not necessarily a product pusher or one-trick pony that's trying to push out an individual product, but somebody that's capable of architecting a full solution that's got the capability to change, manage some complexity within it, and move and work alongside in partnership with our clients. I think those are the kind of opportunities where we thrive and really excel.
It's interesting. Sometimes this question comes up, and one of these days, Gene and I will compile the answers to this into one video. But you talk to your CEO peers on the customer side all the time. Do you think we have hybrid work figured out yet? I mean, just as you're having business conversations, or are we still, as in the consulting, on our end, and the supplier community on your end, are we still sort of chasing a moving target?
I think the answer is it depends. I think it's been interesting to see, I've had the opportunity to travel a little bit. I've now done some international travel. And I think depending on what market you're in, you see different behavior patterns starting to emerge. I think, in London looks like it's back to business as usual, right? And so I think that there's probably still some hybrid status. I think, you're not necessarily looking at a workforce that's in the office 5 days a week. It may be the 3 and 4 day a week. And I think that they've kind of adapted and adopted new styles in the new environment successfully. From our own perspective, we've got offices throughout the United States. I think outside the major metro areas, we're back to what I would almost qualify as a return to normal. I think the struggle that I've seen, at least, from our own business perspective and with the client organizations that we're dealing with, particularly in the United States, is in those major metro areas. There's the struggle that I think that it's still a reluctance to return to a more normal working environment, a more regular presence in office. And I think that's really the conundrum that we have, is that in the major metro areas, the New Yorks, the DC metro area, San Francisco, I think that there is really the struggle of trying to figure out, will we ever get back to normal? And if not, what is the new normal going to be? And how do you define the role of the office and the office worker in those locations?
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes I talk to CEOs, and the feeling that, people will be home sometimes. There's an attachment to it. That means that's less of a burden on IT for some period of the week because they're not in a building. And it's and you're like, you've got the kind of question the wrong way, right? I mean, the reality of it is, if you're in work part-time or home part-time, that means you're building 2 IT stances at all times, right?
Yeah. I mean, you look at the how things have transformed over the last 3 years. You look at the information security implications of having that remote workforce. You look at the influx of how do you provide the assurances around security for somebody that's working out of their own home versus working out of an office where you can physically control and have some parameters around the real estate and configuration of an office space. You look at the continuity of collaboration and how you continue the collaboration exercises within a workforce that is transitioning from back and forth. It's a challenge. So I don't think it is simple. Like you said, I don't think it's as simple as saying that the burden drops. I think it's a different burden, and I think that there are different challenges that we have to navigate through as a result.
Does the office change? Kind of what you accomplish? I mean, you're in London right now. You said, I'm laughing about it culturally. I spent quite a bit of time in London myself, and had business assets over there that I had to go tend to in the same way that you're doing it now. And in a lot of ways, I think Londoners probably just wanted to put their suits back on, and pull the umbrella out of the closet, sort of a cultural thing, right?
100%.
Go get your tea. They love their commute. I mean, it's a thing, right? In London. But I do agree with you in the big cities here as well. It's just a really, really interesting kind of dynamic to think about. You mentioned collaboration, and one of the reasons why we're doing this episode when we're doing it is that you guys have recently have announced an acquisition, and you're there in their office. So Pure IP adds something to the, to the portfolio. Give me the story there. Why did you pursue it? And how does the combined company look in your mind?
Yeah, so I think for folks have been tracking us since 2019. We've been extraordinarily acquisitive. Pure IP will be our 9th acquisition, and as I think I mentioned, anticipated closing sometime mid-June after we receive final regulatory approvals. I think for all those acquisitions, if you think about our business strategy, there's really 3 facets that we evaluate a potential acquisition against. One is geographic expansion. Does it continue to penetrate us into new markets and the capability of delivering a broader footprint of services to our client base and customer base than what we would have been prior to acquisition? Second is how does it improve the continuum of services that we can deliver, particularly in that next-gen voice communication space? And how does it broaden the portfolio of offerings that we can send out to our customers? And then the third aspect is, does it have unique platform intellectual property capabilities that allow us to be able to carve out a niche for ourselves in market? So I think when we look at any potential acquisition opportunity, we try and evaluate how is that acquisition coincidental with one or more of those three dimensions. Pretty clearly, Pure IP checked all those boxes straight out of the gate. They're an international provider. I think they're one of the largest footprints of delivery of PSTN replacement services in the Microsoft Teams environment. They've got the capability to deliver PSTN replacement services in nearly 50 different countries throughout the world. So pretty significant check on the geographic box. Clearly their relationship with Microsoft as well as Cisco WebEx and Zoom is the next era of evolution in the next-gen communication space of being able to provide voice services terminating into one of those collaborative tools. And then, we look at the IP that they have around, both their direct routing solution, but also the Operator Connect capabilities that they have. And it was a key gap in our portfolio. I think, from our perspective, when we think about enterprise voice, if I flip back to that 5-minute pitch, we've been a business that's constantly focused on delivering and supporting voice as an application within the enterprise for our customers. I think when we look at the next evolution of that in the U.S., but really worldwide, I think our belief is particularly for the mid to large enterprise, there's going to be a rationalization around their voice investment. And I think our expectation is the vast majority of our customers and potential customers are going to look to leverage the investment that they've made in one of those collaborative tools, whether it's Teams, whether it's Cisco WebEx or Zoom. That's going to be the endpoint through which they deliver their voice services. And I think the critical value that Pure IP brings is not only does it check kind of the three strategic boxes that we evaluate acquisitions against, but it really provides us what we think is going to be the next generation and next evolution of delivering and supporting voice services within the enterprise.
Yeah, there's a lot there to unpack. Let me summarize one point that you made that I really liked, sure. Which was, and I we see the market the same way. I mean, I agree. I think we're in a, pandemic-induced Zoom, WebEx, Teams.
Yep.
Go forward here.
Yep.
But you talked about voice as application, right? I think sort of, in legacy, let's say over the last decade, when you think about communications and its move to the cloud, it's sort of been voice is the application, and then you're amending chat, you're amending video, yep. You're amending in those. Has that script flipped now in your mind? Yeah, is voice the plugin to the collab as opposed to the converse?
Yeah, I think so. I think you look at particularly with Teams. I think it's been one of the most impressive deployments that Microsoft has had probably since the origination of Outlook and the deployment of Outlook as the cockpit for the knowledge worker within the enterprise. I think Teams is it's been so impressive how they have mastered the collaborative aspects, and that's video, that's chat, that's also the collaboration on files, teams and groups, et cetera, and having that Teams cockpit be the interface through which the vast majority of knowledge workers start and end their day. And I think you're right. Voice is now an application that's being delivered into that platform, and I think it's turned the paradigm on its head a little bit. Where you looked at the UCaaS space just generically, and I think it was voice and then adding video and then adding chat. And I think you're 100% right. It's now a collaborative tool that's adding voice as an application into that footprint.
Do you think we would have gotten here as quickly as we have if not for the pandemic?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think at least what we saw, and we just had our board meeting and investment committee meetings around the investment in Pure IP. And the joke that I offered at the time is, not trying to start a political dialogue, but people always, say that the COVID virus was something that was created by China. And I look at it, I'm like, man, if anybody created it, it was Microsoft, because the adoption rate that you see, and listen, it starts March 18th, 2020. The adoption rate that you see after that was just wholesale migrations of people that frankly didn't have a choice, that they realized that very quickly they were going to have an organization of 20,000 people, 30,000 people working out of their houses. What do? And I think people, very quickly moved to the conclusion that, we don't have a choice but to turn on Teams and but to try and figure out how we can leverage this tool set to support the challenges that we have out in the market. I think we saw it, we saw a similar dynamic more locally in New York around Superstorm Sandy, where there was a lot of slow movers to SIP trunking. Yeah. There were a lot of slow movers to the UCaaS environment that I think had the false belief at that time that the traditional copper TDM network was resilient and capable of navigating through any kind of challenges. Sandy hits New York City and wipes out significant portion of the copper infrastructure. And then it was the same thing, wholesale migrations to either SIP trunking or UCaaS services. And that was on a small scale. COVID, I think, did it on a massive scale. And I say Teams, but it's Teams, it's Zoom, and now the movement by Cisco to make significant investments around WebEx to have a competitive offering on Teams. I think all of it was largely influenced by a worldwide pandemic.
Yeah, I would agree. It's funny. I was recently on a Frost and Sullivan think tank conversation where we were having this debate about revolution versus evolution in tech, specifically around this topic. And that's where the discussion got to. They're like, is this an evolution or a revolution? And that was my point. Basically, was the difference between an evolution and a revolution is that a revolution has an impending event. It's got some spark, where evolution sort of is this sort of micro reaction to stimuli over time. I mean, I think that UCaaS in general, and I think sort of adoption of modernized tools was evolving. I think particularly as the workforce got younger, right? But the rest of us, right? All the Gen Xers came along for the ride out of necessity at the end of the day. It really has changed. Is it fair to say that in most of the conversations that you and your team walk into with an enterprise business who's trying to, I like the way you said, rationalize their investment in the collaboration tools, you're walking into a business that either maybe still has a Prem PBX or has a UCaaS solution from a, let's say, call it a voice-centric provider, and they have an investment in Teams, Zoom, WebEx, and they're coming to you and saying, I'd like to consolidate these things. Is that basically the root of almost every conversation you're having today?
Yeah, because I think if you think of the dynamics, there was wholesale adoption of Teams post March 18th, 2020, right? But what didn't happen was rationalized, planned out thought around it. It was just massive deployment of Teams as an application out to a workforce. I think if you think about what's going on broadly from an economic factor and economic condition, US, but I think also globally, there's hints of, I think depending on your perspective, there's either hints of or we're in the process of navigating through some recessionary behavior in the economy from a broad standpoint. And I think now you've got the decision makers in the technology stack of our client organizations now looking and saying, okay, I've got Teams deployed for 20,000 workers that are out there. I've got a renewal that's coming up maybe on my on-premise PBX infrastructure or an end-of-life scenario that I've got to plan through, or maybe I've already made an investment in a cloud-based UCaaS environment. I've got economic pressures that are being put on my shoulders. What's the right way and what's the right path forward?
So Geoff, you talked quite a bit about businesses sort of rationalizing their investment. I want to hone in on that a little bit. By that rationalization, I'm assuming what you mean is when you're meeting with your clients, prospects, they've basically got maybe a prem-based investment, perhaps a UCaaS, a voice-centric UCaaS solution in place, and then obviously they've got Zoom, Teams, WebEx going as well. And they're really seeking for you guys to help them kind of pull that together into a single solution. Am I reading that right?
100%. We had large scale adoption of those collaborative tools post the advent of the COVID pandemic and the transition to that hybrid environment. I think, probably not dissimilar from the initial days of the cloud adoption for infrastructure as a service. It was kind of an explosive use of those platforms, but it wasn't necessarily done and rationalized against the broader context of the investment that they have, that clients have for their voice application within their enterprise. So it's not uncommon for us today to interact with an end customer that has Teams, has Zoom, has Cisco WebEx in conjunction with a cloud PBX or an on-premise PBX. I think if you think about broadly what's going on from an economic standpoint in the world, that either in the midst of a recession or pointing towards a recession, many of our client organizations are faced with the challenge of budgetary constraints and the desire to rationalize their spend around voice services. And I think they're trying to figure out what their roadmap needs to be for harmonizing the investment that they have, and what's the path forward for them to have a more rational thought and planned deployment for voice within their enterprise, while still leveraging the strong benefits that those collaborative tools play.
Yeah, I think I saw in a Gartner paper, they had estimated something to the effect of businesses had a 30% increase in spend on voice and collaboration services in 2020 and into the early stages of 2021. Makes sense that we're building that rationalization into budgets now, I think. What are the, so let's assume then that we're going team centric. What are the use cases when you're pulling them together that are not collab centric, that you still have to make sort of, part of it'd be great to say, get everybody on Teams, but there's still offices and there's still, what kind of things do you guys run into that you have to kind of do the heavy lifting on to pull into the Teams environment?
Great question. I think the Microsofts, the Ciscos, the Zooms would love to portray a story where there's flash cut overnight and miraculously your phone systems go away and people are showing up to the office and fully leveraging the one of those collaborative tools for all their voice and communication and collaboration needs. I think the reality is all clients are going to have to, particularly the larger you are, you're going to have to go through a hybrid environment for periods of times as you manage the transition. So I think that there's a number of use cases around how do I manage, moving 20,000, 30,000 employees off of an on-premise PBX solution into this collaborative environment. It's the joke about the elephant. How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? And I think that's the issue that you're going to see in the transition. And then there are a number of, it sounds funny to say it. There are a number of analog applications that stay to this day, that you've got intercom systems, you've got alarm lines, you've got things that are nobody thinks about, but that are still critical parts of being able to support a multi-site organization that has some complexity in their real estate footprint. There are a number of applications where Teams alone or Zoom alone is not going to be a solution for it, and it requires an architected solution to figure out how you support those quote unquote marginal use cases that do have critical business process value within an organization, if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. I mean, look, there's still I did a big Teams deal for an entertainment company that had venues, right? I mean, sure, all of their information workers want to collab, but there's still a phone at the shipping door and a phone at the hot dog cart.
100%.
And the 4 digits that you dial to unlock the front door, and all of those things aren't going away anytime soon. I asked the question for a specific reason, I think, because the reality of it is that's why BCM One, right? As opposed to the customer just going and buying something from Microsoft. Is that a fair way for me to express that?
Absolutely. I think if you think about Microsoft's overall strategy, and it's not just related to voice, but I think it's the history that they have as an organization. It's a partner solution driven strategy, right? And I think their focus is on what are the big moving blocks that they can enable within an enterprise, and then look to and leverage third party providers like a BCM to be able to step into the breach and be able to architect specific solutions that satisfy that full need for the end customer, right? Microsoft is not going to come out there necessarily with how do you support that, one phone that's sitting in a venue that somebody's going to have to put in the 4 digits to unlock the front door. They're going to look to and leverage partners, and I think that's the value that we provide in that service. That is not only the voice pedigree and understanding voice as an application within the enterprise, but the capability to architect and deliver unique solutions out to our end customers.
I think people have a tendency to think that Microsoft is competitive to providers like yourself. And the reality of it is, I tell them all the time, like, Microsoft doesn't do hand-to-hand combat. It's just not what they do. Right.
Yeah.
Go
Ahead.
please.
I was going to say, from a strategy perspective, I think it's a good question. Are they friend or foe? And I think the answer is their intent is neither, right? I think that the reflection you got to have as an organization like BCM is you got to think about, and whether it's Microsoft or it's Cisco, they are that large whale swimming through the ocean, and just their movement is going to cause some turbulence around them. And I think as a partner, as somebody that's competing in that market space, I think you've got to reflect and realize that if you're going to try and fight head to head against a Microsoft or a Cisco, it's probably a losing proposition, right? And I think the challenge for people like myself, for our management team, for others that are in the market, is you got to figure out how you craft and build your own value proposition in the context of having those larger providers in the space swimming alongside them, and how do you build value on what their offering is, and how do you define that value set for the end customer?
Fantastic. I wanted one quick one just before we sort of jump into the fun.
Sure.
Have a couple of fun questions, but there is a lot of noise around Microsoft right now in Operator Connect. We're hearing that a lot, and in particular, you're hearing it from the Microsoft people, right? Because that's that's the endorsed way. But people have been tying into and building solutions around Teams on the Direct Connect solution for some time. So you don't need to give us the technical white paper, but for the listeners who are this far with us, can you explain Operator Connect, how you guys engage with that? And then are you still doing Direct Connect? Does that still have a life in your business as well? Just read that back to me a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. The way to think of it is Operator Connect. I think it's a drastically easier means for end customers to bring their own provider into the Microsoft Teams environment. And so I think from Microsoft's standpoint, I think their own projections are the vast majority of growth that they anticipate seeing delivering PSTN services into Teams will be through Operator Connect. The challenge there is with that simplification, you lose some capabilities, right? So the more complex the need might be, the more complex some of the routing schemes might be. You lose some of the finite capabilities to do that configuration through Operator Connect. And so there is still a use case out there today for direct routing into the Microsoft infrastructure. And I think it's largely based on the complexity of need that customer organization has for grooming and managing the voice traffic within their organization. I think broadly what we're seeing is the use cases are starting to slant more and more towards Operator Connect. I think our expectation is that there will continue to be investment from Microsoft's standpoint to expose more and more capability through Operator Connect, because it is, truthfully, it's a far easier way for them to turn that voice workload on within the organization rather than the starting point that they had with that direct routing, direct connect infrastructure.
So think about it like direct routing is like having an API. I can make it happen, but it's a lot more work. And then sort of think of Operator Connect more like an integration, right? As opposed to.
It's the old days of plug and play versus, writing your own driver and doing your own driver configuration when you're adding a hardware peripheral onto your computer versus you just plug it in and it plays. Operator Connect is much more the mindset of that plug and play environment.
Yeah, and that some of those use cases where BCM is important, we were talking about a couple of minutes ago, are the ones that likely have to go direct connect just because, or direct routing just because of what it is that you're trying to accomplish.
Yep. And I also think to some extent, there's also the complexity of the footprint, where you're delivering calls. Is there going to be a local session border controller that's involved? I think as that complexity starts to peak up is when you start to tilt back still towards the direct routing piece.
So to sum all this up, BCM One acquires Pure IP. The way I'm seeing this now is expanded international reach. Your belief that businesses are going to focus on a collab-centric experience in teams, and you guys really have both the reach and the integration with them to get after all of the tough use cases that businesses are going to run into, when they try to make teams the center of their experience from a communication perspective.
You nailed it. You're hired.
All right. Fantastic. I'm going to have a job. That's awesome. So this was great, Geoff. I appreciate it. Let's
My pleasure.
Let's get into a little bit of fun, and then we can wrap and, hopefully get you out of here not too long over the amount of time that I put on your calendar. I know you're very busy there in London trying to get this done. Three quick things. First one, give me a shameless prediction, 18 to 24 months. It could be about the New York Giants or it could be about technology. Your call.
Man, I got to pass on this one. The joke I have with, I'm still really close with the guys that founded BCM. And the joke I have with them is when I took over as CEO in 2019, if you told me that I was going to have to navigate, my first job as a CEO, I was going to have to navigate through a worldwide pandemic, recession, record inflation, record interest rates, and social and political unrest in the United States in my first 3 years, I would have told them you're crazy. Find somebody else to do the job. I think the shameless prediction is like you're not going to be able to predict the next 18 months. Who knows what's going to happen? And I think the message to business leaders always is, be prepared. Be prepared to be able to adapt and alter your strategy and your business to be able to meet a dramatically changing and dynamic environment around you.
I like that. And I do think that was an answer. I don't think you took a pass on it. But I do.
Can I phone a friend?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Is Danny Dimes going to get 10 wins this year?
No, there's no way.
Okay.
I think they're going to take a step back.
Wow. Okay. And as a Giants fan, all right, well, we'll see. We'll have to read that one back. We always have a couple of episodes towards the end of the football season where we're sort of reading back on football results. So we'll see where that is. All right. So the next pandemic happens, and it's much more dramatic. Maybe this one is robots taking over the world. I don't know. Given what people are saying in the media, maybe that's what's next. But you've got only one app that continues to function on your phone. What's the one app you got to have?
Probably a compass, right? You think about I was talking about with my wife actually last week that this kind of cohort of humans, right, is probably the first in history that is unable to go back in time, right? Our reliance on technology is so integral as part of our day that some of the fundamental things that our grandparents or our great-grandparents were capable of doing on a daily basis, we're incapable of doing on our own because of this over-reliance on technology and supplemental technology in our day. And I think just the basics of navigation, I look at my kids, they don't know how to get anywhere. They need to have ways telling them how to go someplace. And I think, compass. So start with something simple. I know where north is and I can find my way home from there,
So what you just said, and I'll romanticize it, is if nothing works on my phone, I just want to be able to find my true north. So good to go.
100%.
I like that.
100%.
All right. Last question, and then we're going to let you get out of here after, what was supposed to be about 35 minutes, and we had an hour of technical problems. So I think nobody will figure that out, hopefully, when Gene puts a good edit together. But this was a great conversation. Last one, what's on your end table right now? What are you reading? Anything that's interesting that you can share with our listeners?
Yeah, so big podcast listener, focus mostly on outdoors and recreation related stuff. Heard a podcast of the author Ian Fraser, who I think has written a number of nonfiction novels. So I picked up, he's got a great book about, I think it's The Fish's Eye, and it's about outdoor and angling related stories, collection of short nonfiction stories around his experiences fishing in the United States and throughout the world. So working my way through that now.
I'm going to look that up because my wife keeps torturing me and telling me I have to read something that's not like business management.
Yeah, I can't do it. I mean, there are a couple business books I love that I will reread on occasion just to remember myself or remind myself. But I think from my perspective, there is a beneficial aspect to the unplug and focus on something that's very different and very out of the domain that I'm involved with on a daily basis.
Love it. And great advice. Geoff, before we roll, if our listeners want to find out a little bit more about BCM One or Pure IP, what's their best bet? Website?
Website's always a good start, but I'd say human interaction is a big part of our business, right? And I think the value prop that we have for our customers is longstanding relationships that we've built over the course of 30 years. Always welcome, reach out to me. Mike Nowak is the lead of our sales organization, really a key customer facing role. Mike is a great person to connect out to, as well as Paul Komokauth, who leads our marketing organization. So I think amongst the three of us, great people to start the dialogue with if BCM's a new name to you, and always happy to take a call and meet a new person.
Yeah, we've had Nowak on the show. He's great.
Really
enjoyed talking with him. It was a great episode. Well, Geoff, thanks for your time. I really appreciated it. It was a little bit longer, took more of your calendar today than I was hoping to, but I'm glad we got this conversation in, and we're really looking forward to having you again on a future episode of The Bridge.
Always happy to, and best of luck to you and the Bridgepoint team. You guys are great partners of ours, and we're always happy to join you and have this opportunity.
Fantastic, thank you. Listen, if you made it this far, there must have been some good content, or you're just a fan or a relative of mine. In either case, we appreciate you spending your most valuable asset with us, your time. We don't take that lightly. We'd also like to say one more time that we're appreciative of Bridgepoint Technologies and their belief and sponsorship of this show. We hope that if you or someone you know is thinking about your company's digital transformation, or simply the next IT project that you may not have the resources, budget, or time to get to, I'm sure that Bridgepoint, one of the country's fastest growing technology advisory and procurement firms, can help. Check out bridgepointtechnologies.com. Don't forget the E on Bridgepoint, or simply reach out to me at Skinka, SKINKA, at bpt3.net. Also take a minute, please, if you would, to give us a 5-star review on your favorite platform. It helps give us the visibility to reach other people like you. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bridge. I'm Scott Kinka, and until next time, there's a lot of noise out there in business and in life. Do what you can to be the signal. Thanks.